Setting up traceability between test cases and user stories or requirements is made very easy with the TestRail Jira integration. After you've concluded designing test cases for your user stories or requirements, it's time to plan how you are going to execute them. Here, we can see the test cases repository page in TestRail with all the test cases we have already designed. Notice that they have already been assigned a priority in order to manage the risk when we're planning our test runs, as well as references, meaning the test cases are covering these particular user stories from Jira. Imagine we are in the middle of a sprint with the objective of concluding the project's minimum viable product, or MVP for short. This MVP is being tracked using an epic called Account MVP v1. By opening the epic, we can see what's contained in it to reach our objective. Naturally, as part of the development process, the MVP needs to be thoroughly tested, so our testing goal is to execute tests covering all the user stories contained in it. To do so, let's go back to TestRail and start planning immediately. To track our epic and the associated test runs and plans, we can make use of milestones in TestRail. Milestones are used as containers for testing activities related to a particular goal. We can create a milestone and call it MVP v1 Final Tests. To create a link between the milestone and the epic, we can add the epic Jira issue ID to the references field. We can also set the expected end date for this milestone, so we'll be able to manage our testing timelines. Finally, let's save the new milestone. We can see it displays progress information, but so far no test runs or plans have been added to it. Also notice the reference to the epic on the right-hand side. By hovering over the reference, we can quickly see the information fetched directly from Jira and even edit those details. By clicking on the reference, we are redirected to Jira, so we can see all the user stories we're targeting in this testing milestone. If you click Show on the TestRail Results section and select the Milestones tab, you'll be able to see this epic is being tracked by the milestone we just created, as well as its progress. This is useful for Jira users to have a quick overview of the testing progress that is happening inside TestRail without having to leave Jira. They can also click the milestone name, and once again it will redirect them to TestRail. Now let's actually start planning the tests we want to run for this milestone. We can go to the Test Runs and Results page, and we'll start by adding a test plan. Let's name it Cross-Browser Test Plan, as we're going to create multiple separate runs for different browsers, then add our epic reference to create visibility in Jira. We also want to make sure to link this test plan to our milestone in TestRail, so we can track all activity within it. Next, we will add test runs by clicking on the button on the right-hand panel. Test plans allow us to create multiple test runs based on configurations, such as browser name or any other testing variable you may want to use. Let's select Chrome and Safari as our web browser configurations for testing. To track test run details on our Jira epic, we'll also add the reference to the test run's configuration by clicking on Description, References, and Data. Simply enter the reference and click OK. Finally, let's save our test plan. Once again, we can see the epic reference on the right-hand panel, and if we navigate to Jira, we'll now be able to see the test plan details as well as the associated test runs on the TestRail Results section. On the Plans tab, we can see the plan and the associated test run progress. On the Runs tab, we can see the test runs, and by expanding each one, we can even see the tests contained in them and their current results. Having set all the required references, we have generated full visibility into our testing progress straight from our Jira Epic Details view. Now let's go back to TestRail and start executing test cases. We'll start by opening the test run for Chrome. All cases are still untested, but we can immediately see the details for the test Successfully Log In, which is first on our execution list. Let's assume we tested it and found a defect. We can quickly set the status to Failed, add a comment on why it failed, such as unable to log in, and even set the status step by step. So let's say the first step passed and the second one failed. And let's say the actual result was a back-end error page displayed. Since this test failed, you'll also want to report a defect. TestRail enables you to do so directly from the Add Result interface by using the push functionality on the Defects field. Let's click it and report a defect. We'll name the defect Backend Error on Login, and we can select the issue type to be a bug or any other issue type you use for defects, and also add it to the epic at hand for easier tracking. On the description, there's already text in place, which comes from a template that can be configured in the administration section of TestRail, which you may want to tailor to best suit your needs and preferences. By default, it will contain all the basic test details. You also have the ability to submit test evidence as an attachment to the Jira bug, but let's just submit the bug for now. Notice the defects field is immediately populated with the Jira defect ID, so you don't have to worry about manually adding the reference. Another way of doing it, if you prefer the Jira interface, is using the add functionality, which will just redirect you to Jira, where you can then create the bug as you would regularly create any other Jira issue. Although this does come with the downside of having to manually add the issue ID in TestRail. Since we already created the bug, let's add the result in TestRail. On the Fast Track panel, we can see our result details, including test step status and a link to the defect we just reported. By hovering over it, we can see the defect details that are fetched directly from Jira, and we can also edit them directly in TestRail, for instance if we forgot to add any important piece of information. So let's say we want to include a note saying, there was a JavaScript error on the browser console logs. Then we can just click Update Issue, and the changes will be saved in Jira. We can also navigate straight to Jira using this link. To see the information provided by the TestRail Jira app, just click Show. This tab shows us the tests that generated this bug. In this case, it's only related to one test, and by expanding it, we can find more context and even see the test step status and information registered by the tester. This is a quick way for developers to have a nice looking view of test execution information when fixing bugs. Now let's fast forward to later into the test execution. On the main milestone view, we can see results have been submitted for all test cases. Another interesting view that gathers information directly from Jira is the defects view. Here, we can see multiple defects have been reported, and we'll also quickly understand their resolution status, which complements our understanding of the project status. Note that the statuses are fetched directly from Jira. In the Jira epic, we can see the general progress information by going to the TestRail Results section and checking the Milestones tab. We can also go into further detail by opening the Plans tab or the Runs tab. If we open one of the user stories contained in this epic, we will also be able to see the results history from the test cases that are covering it in the Cases tab. By expanding a test, you'll also find more information about their execution. Having reached the end of the test cycle, we want to assess whether our testing goals were achieved. This means we want to make sure we've covered every user story with test executions. We can take advantage of TestRail's reporting capabilities by accessing the Reports page. For our objective, we should use the Results Comparison for References report. This report allows you to check your test results against a set of user stories, which may not only reveal testing status, but also lack of coverage. To set it up, there are two basic configurations you need to make. First, on the References tab, select the option The Following References Only, and then input the list of Jira issue IDs you want to check for coverage, one per line. Then, on the Sections and Test Runs tab, select the test runs that match the following filter, and we will want all the test runs inside the milestone we use to track testing the Jira epic. There are other configurations you could make, but for the sake of this example, we'll stop there and add the report. In the report itself, we see a chart at the top with the test results for our two runs, as well as the combined results, taking into account the latest submitted statuses. Scrolling down, we can find information on the runs that are considered in this report, and further down, the results for all test cases. This not only provides a view of the global testing results, but also allows us to check for coverage gaps. If you'll notice, the user story SA6 is not covered by any test cases, so we are potentially leaving a door open for defects on the features described by that user story. This is the kind of traceability provided by the Jira integration which you can leverage to improve your testing process and achieve as much test coverage as possible.